Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the show. It has been a very hot couple of days here in the UK, so excuse the get up. I'm still suffering. I've got a huge fan next to me, so if you can hear that, I'm sorry, but I've got to stay cool. Thanks to everyone in the chat for being here live, and anyone that's listening or watching after the fact, either on YouTube or the Anomalous Podcast Network. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Now, let me start again. I've been having a lot of conversations with people recently, and it always comes back to you've got to look at the history. And so what better way to look at the history than bring on my good friend and one of the best in the business at looking at old cases, Mr. Sean Raasch. Sean, how's it going, man?
Thanks for having me, Vinny. I always appreciate talking to you. I am not one of the best in the business.
Hey, we could argue about that.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, dude. I've spent way too much time looking at old documents and getting lost in a sea of crazy cases. Most definitely. And it feels like once you start digging, it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen those Pringles commercials, but like you just can't stop. Once you start, you can't stop, because each one, there's something curious to it, whether it turns out to be, a dud, so to speak. Even those are interesting, to find out how they come to those conclusions. And then you run into some of these cases that we'll get into today, is the Bentwaters, is a Lakenheath case from 1956, that it's just like, I had no idea, how many like amazing, unexplainable, sightings there have been throughout the course of time. It's just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And the thing is a lot of these old cases have got so many data points joined to them as well, radar and all sorts of things. And you mentioned the Bentwaters Lakenheath, because I did a deep dive on this channel with Dr. David Clark a few months back, and it was all from the British perspective, and we're going to jump into it from the US perspective, which is amazing. So we're kind of covering all bases there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, man. But I thought what we do to start off is, obviously there's a lot of language coming out at the moment with the IAA and the NDAA. So I just wondered, we don't have to go too deep on it, but I just wondered how you feel everything's going this year, maybe compared to last year, and is it all going in the right direction for you?
For me, so far so good. The one thing that sticks out to me, that's quite a bit different from, because I've looked into, previous congressional inquiries like in the 60's and all that, and how basically Congress kind of got hosed a bit. It all they wanted to do open hearings. Gerald Ford was pressing for open hearings in 66, and that's what he really wanted. But the Air Force kind of talked him into, getting these scientists on board and doing a study through, which, we know is the Condon report, which wound up being a huge dud. But in the paperwork, they're like, well, at least it's something. So we're looking forward to this report, and it's like, but what I really like is, it seems like Congress isn't going to take that, because they first passed the original language. It got hijacked pretty much by the DOD and turned into the AOI MSG, which completely, there was misinformation because they were, you put airborne in the title of the group, completely leaving out, aerospace, transmedium. But they're not taking it. They're like, no. And they're stepping up the language even more. They're saying, hey, we got to look back to January 1947. And you actually have to do it, and we have to get all these people on board from the CIA, Air Force, and the other groups, which I think is great. They're staring the crap right in the face, and they're saying, no, we're gonna do it the right way. So hopefully it continues to go that way. Now, if you're like me, sometimes you get a little short on patience, right? You're like, oh man, now we got to wait till December or whatever for this to get passed. And then when stuff actually going to go into motion and play, but in the background too, that things are happening. Like this stuff doesn't just happen out of nowhere. Like they're just sitting around and thinking about what kind of, I don't know, what should we do with UFOs this year? There's stuff happening in the background that is helping write this language. And to be honest, you have to be somewhat of a fool to think that, compelling information isn't being communicated or shown behind closed doors that instigate stuff like this, because what they're doing is very strong. It's very strong language, and you don't see anyone really coming out against it. You don't
Yeah.
see it in what is a very political world we live in these days. You might get someone like this eventually, but you're not getting a bunch of like Democrats or Republicans or whatever saying, what a waste of time. We got this going on, and you guys are spending all this time on this UFO language. It's pretty incredible. And that to me kind of further laments the fact that something is up, and I'm glad somebody is trying to do something about it,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree completely. And one thing, I mean, I've not done a deep dive on the current language. I'm actually going to do that tomorrow with Katie Howland, which
nice.
I know you've
Perfect
done.
person to do it with.
Yeah. So I have been preparing, speaking to some people, and one thing that's kind of struck me is that then it's not going to be another case of this time the public are going to get a load more information. It doesn't look that way. It looks like they're opening more secure channels behind the scenes for people to come forward and talk without fear of repercussions. So,
Right.
I think people still need to temper their expectations to a degree as far as what the public are going to hear, but just let it be known that things are happening and things are moving forwards behind the scenes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and let's be real for a second. That kind of stinks, right? That there isn't something that's going to be like, hey, public, some sort of obvious like, disclosure movement here happening. Like, our goal is to get this information and freaking tell you about it. That stinks. That's not more of a thing, but also maybe a lot of this stuff wouldn't happen if that was kind of the prerogative, right? Like
Yeah.
if it was like, we're going to tell you about it, there probably would be more of an effort to fight up against it. So it's kind of like a fine line that you have to walk. Like, you have to do things for the right reason, right? And honestly, the right reason, first of all, is to protect, you know, beings of this planet, right? Our military, our pilots, our Navy men and women, military, protect that and make sure everything's okay. And if, they're, encountering these things and having mid-air possible collisions and stuff like that, so that's order number one. You got to take care of that. Make sure that everything is communicated properly so you can mitigate that as much as possible. So it's a priority process, right? You got to make sure things are safe. Safety is taken care of. Then at that point, maybe you can go further and tell people about the things you're starting to find.
Yeah, completely agree. And for anybody that hasn't watched it yet, go over to Sean's channel, the links below, and check out the conversation him and Jay had with Christopher Sharp and Katie Howland. It's fascinating, and they really do go into quite a lot of information and details on the language. But let's not stick on that too long. I'm just going to give a quick shout out here to my boy Benji. Thank you so much for the $4.99 donation, dude. Two of the best in the business. Hey, we do what we do, and we do our best. That's all we can do. So I appreciate that, Benji. Thank you so much, man. Right, another thing that I wanted to just quickly touch upon is the announcement of Travis Taylor as chief scientist of the UAP task force. So it kind of came out of left field a little bit, and obviously a bit of controversy came along with that. I'll just say straight away, for me, right? Well, I guess so. We shouldn't expect anything else. But for me personally, everyone is welcome to disagree. I don't see a conflict of interest with his work on Ancient Aliens and the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, but that's just me. I'd be more interested just to see what your take is on that whole thing.
Personally, I really like Travis Taylor. I think he seems like a good guy. He's obviously brilliant. And I think he takes things I think he does things the correct way, right? He's not committing to anything. Just because he's on Ancient Aliens doesn't mean he's coming out and saying these things are for sure UFOs and they're aliens from Zeta Reticuli, or they're all coming from this, place in Skinwalker Ranch to help his show. Like, there's not, he's saying, I don't know, and what else do you want from somebody that's looking at something honestly, that's recorded with multiple sensors, that doesn't fit within the prosaic realm of technology that we have, or technology that's owned by a foreign country that they know of? He honestly doesn't know, and so he's telling you the truth. And let's be frank, a lot of people like ancient aliens, maybe, and I've even said this before, but a lot of people in the community don't care for ancient aliens because of, it goes off the road a little bit with some of the theories. But, if you watch it, they're never saying that's what reality is. They're just having people try to expand their mind to think of different things that could be, and they're always saying, they're never saying this is fact. Aliens built the pyramids. They're like, could it be? And if you want to have any chance at fathoming any of this stuff at all, you have to start asking yourself, could it be? I had a conversation with a good friend of mine the other night at dinner, and I'm always afraid to talk about what I do with people that aren't into this, but they bring it up and they're super respectful about it. And they actually said, yeah, honestly, I've actually watched Ancient Aliens before. I like it. And I'm like, well, and I'm kind of even fighting back. Well, they kind of have some crazy theories sometimes. He goes, yeah, but they're never saying this is what it is. They're just mentioning a lot of facts about history and a lot of different unique things. I'm like, yeah, but regardless of that, Skinwalker Ranch, like, people are allowed to do different things with their personal life, and we don't have to, judge everything that they do. The guys work for, I think it was the DOD or something, since he was a teenager, right? Yeah. I forget, it was like 2 PhDs, 3 masters, something. I can't keep up, but the guy's obviously brilliant. He's obviously a very smart person, and he's even said it, like, they didn't hire him because he was on Ancient Aliens. That wasn't on the resume that he turned in. They brought him in because of his educational background and obviously how brilliant he is with this stuff. So, I'm all for it until proven otherwise. I think it's wrong to make a negative judgment towards somebody without seeing anything. That's negative, and just starting out that way. I think everybody deserves a chance, and he's definitely put time and effort in to get that chance. And I can't, without seeing his work, I can't really say anything else. And even if I did see it, what am I going to say? I'm not an aeronautical engineer. But my instinct is I like the guy, and he seems like a good dude. So I'm all for giving him a chance and giving him the benefit of the doubt. I like watching him on Skinwalker Ranch too. I think he brings a great scientific perspective to everything, and he tries to do that the correct way as well. He's not going in there saying, there's grizzly bears coming out of portals. I swear to God, he's just saying these are the things we're measuring, and this could be what's possible. We don't know, but that's why we have to continue to study it. And that's what this whole thing is about, is we don't know. So we have to continue to study it, and that's the mindset that we need. And it's other people that keep using things like aliens or, other things that they think would diminish the respectability of the topic. They keep using that to try to bring this down or make it seem goofy, but they're not going to win. An unidentified flying object or aerial phenomenon is called that because it's unidentified. If we thought it was alien, it wouldn't be unidentified. So I don't know. That's kind of a long-winded answer, but I'm down with Travis until proven otherwise, sir. So that's how I roll.
Awesome, man. I agree. I couldn't agree more. In fact, I think it is a case of, especially whether you're saying UFOs and UAP, especially in a conversation with on Twitter, for example, where it's difficult to get your point across with, limited characters, and the nuance is not picked up on correctly a lot of the time. And people do just think if you're talking about UFOs and that it is aliens that you're talking about. And I hate the word aliens. I don't use it. It's not. Yeah. So
yeah, we have immigrants from all over the world in these spaceships flying around the country. Aliens from Mexico, aliens from Canada, all over the place. You know, no, but yeah, I mean, and it's these words that are used to pigeonhole things, right? Like, let's be honest, like things are more complicated than we think, right?
Yeah.
And you're only gonna shoot yourself in the foot by sticking to like one word like that for what something could possibly be that you barely understand, you know.
Yeah, totally. So I appreciate that, man. But look, we're here to jump into some cases. So I think we should just do that straight away. And we are going to start off with the 1956 Lakenheath Bentwaters case. That was a joint operation between the Royal Air Force over here and the US Air Force. And it was around, I think it was 2 or 3 bases, if I'm correct, if I can remember. And that was obviously RAF Lakenheath, RAF Bentwaters. And I think there was another one involved as well, possibly. But are you
No,
at the
you're
right
right.
place? Are you at the right place? I can share the screen, and then I'll
Yeah,
let you jump straight into what you've come up with.
sure. Yeah.
There we go.
Well, yeah, you're right. There were 3 areas that picked this stuff up on radar, and I thought what I could start with is this sighting letter that was written by a United States Air Force retired person. I don't have the information of who that is in here, unfortunately, but it really gives a good take on what happened on August 13th, 1956. And so it starts just with credentials. I'm retired, 20 years service, 1967 from the USAF. I've placed my name, rank, serial number at the top of the page if you want to check authenticity. He's an air traffic controller throughout service career and utilized radar for the last 16 years in the control of air traffic. I won't bother listening to the types, blah, blah, blah. So if you go to what I'm going to go to is, so this is pretty much just a brief synopsis, and basically what happened is there were multiple sighting reports. One sighting was on radar was clocked at 4,000 miles per hour. Others were 400, 600 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get to kind of, I guess you could say the juicy parts. So
Do it.
yeah, they sent interceptors after, and this is about 9:30, 10 p.m. And they sent interceptors after these UFOs. So I'm just going to start in the first paragraph. I also hooked to my local Air Force Base commanding officer in my unit, commander on my switchboard, and there could have been others hooked in also that I was not aware of. I repeated all the facts known to this point and continued to give a detailed report on the target's movements and location. The target made several changes in location, always in a straight line, always at about 600 miles per hour, and always from a standing or stationary point to his next stop at a constant speed. So we have hovering there. And no buildup in speed at all. These changes in location varied from 8 miles to 20 miles in length. So it's dropping out, popping up somewhere else. What does that remind you of? David Fravor's account, Tic Tac.
And it sounds like there's some instantaneous acceleration there if it's just a constant speed.
Yeah, and no thrust or buildup, right? Going from 0 to 600 like that. So that's definitely an observable. So after I imagined about 30 to 45 minutes, it was decided to scramble 2 RAF interceptors to investigate. This was done, I believe, by the 3rd Air Force. Skipping to the 3rd paragraph, we immediately issued headings to the interceptor to guide him to the UFO. So they see this UFO, they're trying to, have him intercepted. They're telling him where it is. The UFO remains stationary, it's hovering. This vectoring of the intercept aircraft continued. We continually gave the intercept aircraft his heading to the UFO and his distance from the UFO at approximately 1 to 2 mile intervals. Shortly after we told the intercept aircraft he was 1.5 mile from the UFO, and it was 12 o'clock from his position, he said, "Roger, Lakenheath, I've got my guns locked on him." Then he paused and said, "Where did he go?" "Do you still have him?" We replied, "Roger, it appeared he got behind you and he's still there." There were now 2 targets, one behind the other, same speed, very close, but 2 separate, distinct targets. So to me, I mean, you could start to say, is this thing psychic? How did it know to move and get behind him, but right when he locked on with his gun radar, he was ready to shoot at this thing. And that's immediately when it decides to get behind him. That's pretty intense to me. It goes on to say the first movement by the UFO was so swift, circling behind the interceptor, missed it entirely. But it was seen by the other controllers. However, the fact that this had occurred was confirmed by the pilot of the interceptor. The pilot of the interceptor told us he would try to shake the UFO and would try it again. He tried everything. He climbed, dived, circled, etc. But the UFO acted like it was glued right behind him. Always the same distance, very close, but we always had two distinct targets. Between about 200, 600 feet, probably closer than that, we would have gotten one target, both aircraft and UFO. Okay, so it goes on some logistics there. Then this gets very interesting. It gets to the emotional aspects of it. The interceptor pilot continued to try and shake the UFO for about 10 minutes. Approximate. It seemed longer, both to him and us. And, you know, if anyone's had a UFO sighting, that is how it feels. It goes by so fast, but it feels like it happens in slow motion. So I found that interesting. But he continued to comment occasionally, and we could tell from the tonal quality he was getting worried, excited, and also pretty scared. Very interesting stuff right there. And so then he said he was going to return. He was running out of gas, basically. And that's in this paragraph here, paragraph 3. And the thing started fading away. And isn't that interesting? He goes on the intercept. When he decides to stop the intercept, the thing's like, okay, forget it then. Like, oh, what the heck? So it's a very interesting case. You have instantaneous acceleration, possible psychic aspect going on there. And later in this report, and I forget where it is again here in this report. I didn't write it down, unfortunately, but his engines started malfunctioning. And you have radar pickup, and you actually have visual pickup as well. And I'm going to get to that. So I'll just quickly go through these things. You got any questions so far?
No, I'm just, it's bringing back memories from when I covered the case with David Clark from the UK perspective. You know, there were people all over the base while these intercepts were happening, listening in the little room where the pilots gather. Wow. They were all listening in to you know, because they could hear the tone in his voice of everything that was happening. And yeah, for anyone that, again, hasn't seen that, go back, because we play some recordings of these people being interviewed. I think the interviews were done about 20 years ago, because remember, this is from the 50s. So right. Yeah, for context, I'd go back and listen to them for anyone that's interested in the case, because it really is fascinating.
Amazing. The next thing I wanted to hit on just a little bit is this point number 8 here, and it's by a Dr. Whipple, who actually years prior suggested was with Johns Hopkins University, and he actually suggested, and this is, I believe it's a CIA document, where he suggested a sky patrol where there's cameras all over the place trying to pick up these things in kind of the more hotspot areas. And so Dr. Whipple is in on this case here. He stated that as far as the report at hand is concerned, no obvious physical solution is suggested. He deplored the inadequacy of the typical UFO report as a scientific document. He further stated that the nature of such reports is not likely to change, and urged that if the Air Force was serious in its attempts to resolve this problem, both scientifically and in the public mind, that the Air Force do more than continue its passive investigational attitudes. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I found that pretty strong words by Mr. Whipple, who wasn't really a believer in UFOs either, but he did believe in the scientific method and figuring things out. And he knew that this was obviously an issue. Just real quick, there's a couple of like one sheets here as far as, you know, some of the things that happened. This page is extremely interesting to me, because in the end, the United States Air Force said that this whole case was anomalous propagation, so radar malfunction, and the pilot seeing the visual was because they saw Mars. So all this is happening because somebody saw Mars and the radar's malfunctioning. Well, right here you can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but
I can, yeah.
Okay. The second paragraph here. The GCA operators making these radar sightings were of the opinion that malfunctions of the GCA equipment did not cause the radar sightings. So the people that actually work this stuff say, no, these things were working. And further in this report, you could see that they actually did checks, to make sure that everything was working properly. And in fact, that was the case. So it's always interesting to me when the people who aren't working this equipment and aren't as used to working this equipment, try to tell the operators what the deal is.
Yeah. Didn't you say the operator at the start, he'd worked there on them for 16 years as well? I mean, that's
yeah.
you know.
And then here you can see speed estimated at more than 4,000 miles per hour. So, and there's multiple tracked. A third UFOB, which is what they called them, UFOB at this time, was reported as tracked by Bentwaters. So, and then
you've got Lakenheath radar and Bentwaters radar picking them up. So it's not just one radar. So it can't be just one radar gone wrong.
No,
if you've got two separate air bases picking them up, then come on.
And if we scroll up here a little bit, I'll go back up here for a second. In this letter, he actually talks about a third that picked it up, and the name is just eluding me. It starts with an S. Oh, here it is. Skullthorpe.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then there's other interesting things here. So he writes a little drawing of stuff. I'm not a radar operator, but
well, I believe we had one in the chat earlier. Mr. Christian Thompson worked on radar. The Danish, was it Danish Air Force? Christian, I might be wrong.
Right.
So maybe he understands it.
So yeah, and that's a group of 12 to 15 UFOBs from 8 miles southwest of Bentwaters to approximately 40 to 45 miles northeast of Bentwaters. It's interesting how they're going at a speed to 80, 125 miles an hour. Right. Interesting. Yeah. And then up to 4,000 miles per hour. That's, I think that's what you call, what's the word? An observable?
Yeah. I mean, it's 1956. I mean, that just says it all, really, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah, I think so. Nothing was going 4,000 miles per hour then.
There were people in the UK that just passed it off as balloons again. That the reason why the interceptors couldn't get past them is just because the balloons were moving in the wind and that. But that doesn't account for radar or anything like that. So,
no,
again, yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and balloons aren't going to, be stationary, and then all of a sudden they're going 600 miles per hour.
Yeah,
and disappear and pop up 20 miles somewhere else on the radar.
Yeah, exactly.
So here on this page, you get a little bit of the visual sighting. Sergeant indicated that his attention was first called to the object by its position, size, and unusual color. He was also aware that the Bentwaters GCA was tracking unidentified flying objects by radar at this time. He described the object as spherical and the size of a pin held at arm's length. He cited only one object, which was described as amber color when first observed, later changing to bluish white. So, yeah. And here we say the object was in sight for approximately 1 hour, during which time it intermittently disappeared and reappeared. Just like Mars does that, right?
Yeah, Mars is blue, isn't it? And bluish white sometimes. Come on.
And it disappears and reappears all the time. That's a big Mars quality right there.
So there's dimmer switches on Mars.
So here we see the sergeant, second paragraph, sergeant stated that the 12 to 15 unidentified objects were preceded by 3 objects, which were in a triangular formation with an estimated 1,000 feet separating each object in this formation. Yeah, so it's just a little rundown of the different sighting. So there's 3 altogether, I believe. The 12 to 15 objects actually So those were seen, and then they all formed it into one bigger object.
Interesting. Damn.
Could you imagine that? Those are some crazy balloons.
Yeah.
Just melting right into each other. So, I mean, that's the gist of it.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And these are Blue Book files, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Straight from Project Blue Book.
And
So,
this fell under one of the, was it 700 cases that were not solved in Blue Book that kind of just got, ignored at the end of it?
Well, Blue Book said this one was anomalous propagation.
And that was their final report on this case.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So you have visual you're seeing it visually. You're seeing it on 3 different radars. You're vectoring people into it. It's disappearing, reappearing. It's chasing the interceptor. And anomalous propagation.
Wow.
And I was read a recent article by Ryan Graves contributed towards, where he was talking about not getting any feedback from authorities on their reports. They send in a report, they don't get any feedback on it. And a part of this case that stuck out to me was the fact that this person who wrote the letter mentioned how when he submitted this information of the sighting, he never heard a dang thing about it again. So
weird.
We have 70 years, of people submitting reports. This person, this interceptor pilot, was afraid, for his life, and they don't hear a darn thing about it again.
Yeah.
Nothing like, hey, how you doing? Are you okay?
That'd be a start, wouldn't it?
And the thing is, in other pages of this report, you can hear they don't want to tell the public that they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And that's what this whole thing is about. Is unfortunately a lot of this is a lot of the report is just like this. Like you can barely read it, or like it's really too bad. But in these little sections, there are little sections where you can read how UFO societies and other publicity artists would make of such an incident. It is therefore of great importance that they're so concerned with looking bad. That's their only concern, is looking bad.
And that was from Dr. Hynek as well, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
See right here, point 11. The Lakenheath report could constitute a source of embarrassment to the Air Force, and should the facts as so far reported get into the public domain, it is not necessary to point out what excellent use the several dozen. I don't know what it says after that, unfortunately.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that first bit says enough, really. Jesus.
Why would anomalous propagation be embarrassing?
Yeah.
Man,
that's wild. That's absolutely wild.
It's too bad, really.
I've got to bring this comment up. I've just seen it from Jay. So I feel like I just walked in on my girlfriend hanging out with some hotter guy with a great accent. Oh, Jay, don't be sad, brother.
I'll see you tomorrow, honey.
we can share. Come on.
Sharing is caring.
So,
yeah.
Did you have any other cases that you think we could look over at all? Anything that you've covered before? Anything from the 60s, maybe? I'm happy to stick with the 50s.
60s. I do have something pretty interesting, actually. Let's see if I can bring it up here.
One thing I will just say about that, the Lakenheath Bentwaters case, is that in the British National Archives, a lot of the documentation for that case was destroyed. So some decades ago. So there is some stuff remaining, but a lot of it genuinely was destroyed, which is really, really unfortunate, because that might have given us some really good weight of data as well.
Yeah, and that is really too bad. That is awful.
Yeah, but that's just the way they've done it over here. There's a massive percentage of the older case documents have genuinely just been destroyed, which is awful.
Yeah, because I think it's still underestimated how important those could be, especially now, and we're looking at this stuff. And here's kind of this document I'm going to show is kind of hits on that point a little bit. So this is actually an FBI document.
Okay.
So this is more of administrative document. It's dated July 29th, 1952. And this is a really good one. And I was going to save it for my show, but I'm doing it on yours. Just kidding. But so it's a memorandum from K here to Mont or whatever, subject flying saucers. Now, keep in mind, July 29th, 1952 is like Washington, D.C. sightings.
Yeah.
Like this has just happened, right? So we have purpose to advise at the present time that the Air Force has failed to arrive at any satisfactory conclusion in its research regarding numerous reports of flying saucers and flying discs cited throughout the United States. And the details. Mr. N.W. Philcox, the Bureau's Air Force liaison rep, made arrangements through the Office of Major General John A. Sanford of the Air Force, Director of Air Intelligence, U.S. Air Force, to receive a briefing from Commander Randall Boyd of the current intelligence branch. So this guy's going to it got approved through Sanford to get a briefing by this Randall Boyd in the Estimates Division, Air Intelligence, regarding the present status of Air Force research, air intelligence research into the numerous UFO reports, flying saucers, or whatever you want to call them, flying discs at the time they called them. So this is a kicker. Commander Boyd advised that Air Intelligence has set up at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio, the Air Technical Intelligence Center, which has been established for the purpose of coordinating, correlating, and making research into all reports regarding flying saucers and discs. He advised that Air Force research has indicated that the sightings of flying saucers goes back several centuries, and that the number of sightings reported varies with the amount of publicity. He advised that immediately, if publicity appears in newspapers, that the number of sightings reported increases considerably, and that people start calling in with their sightings several months that they had several months previously. Commander Boyd stated that these reported sightings of flying saucers are placed in the 3 classifications. So they went into the different classifications. But the main point here is Air Force research has indicated that sightings of flying saucers goes back several centuries.
That's crazy. How do you research several centuries worth of sightings?
Well, you got to read the old books, I guess, and stuff, right? Like Jacques Vallée did some research into that. And there are some in some other Blue Book administrative papers, they use Vallée's stuff in some of his research into sightings back in the 1800s and stuff, and actually do like a graph, basically, and mark influx of sightings and decreases and stuff going back to the 1800s. So, and that's from Anatomy of a Phenomenon, I believe they used for that.
Right.
So, but so he's going there, and whatever he's looking at, the person who's briefing him or whatever is telling him that these sightings go back centuries.
It's wild.
Centuries. But yet, so were the sightings back then responsible for anomalous radar propagation?
It's a great point here by Robert Cofford, maybe from the Vatican. It's certainly a good idea. Good possibility. Yeah. And another thing that really stands out in these old cases that from both of the ones we just looked at is that there's so much data there. Imagine if these cases happen now with the systems that we have. I mean, the amount of data that we'd get nowadays with the more high-tech equipment, the Aegis 6 on the ships and things like that, it would be through the roof.
And I'm sure
Amazing.
they are, right?
Yes, I'd imagine so. And this is the thing, we hear about it, that they have this data, and we just don't have it in the public domain. And it does frustrate a lot of people. I understand that it's sources and methods and things like that. But I'm willing to play the long game on things like that, you know, as much as I want to see data, probably more than videos sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, you have to understand that.
Yeah.
It
I
is
mean,
what it
videos,
is.
you know, in the end, I feel like people, unless they have their own experience, some people just like they're not going to believe it. They're either going to think somebody, you know, hoaxed the document, no matter who tells them as it wasn't, no matter who released it, or they're going to say that the video was doctored, no matter who tells them it wasn't, you know. And if the government tells them it wasn't, then the government's lying to them because they're using a special weapon. And, you know, they just want to put this out in the open. Like the whole thing I don't get about a special weapon is like, or Lou or whoever else being, you know, like misinformation or whatever. Like, why would they come out and talk about it to begin with? No one was.
Yeah.
No one was. So why would you put this in the spotlight? You know,
Exactly.
I think it's a little more sneaky if you just don't say anything.
Yeah. You think.
You know, so I don't know how many more documents you want to look at or whatever. I put another one in
Let's
there.
go. Let's do it.
This one, so the Pacific, there's so many sightings in the Pacific. If you just go to the Blue Book Archive and search Pacific, you'll get over 200 some sighting reports, which is a lot. The number one state, I don't know if you can guess, in the United States for sighting reports is Ohio, believe it or not,
Really?
with over 1,000. Yeah.
Wow.
But there's so many states that don't even get to, you know, 80, 90, 50, 20 or whatever. Pacific 200 some. But this one they evaluated as a weather phenomenon, which, by the way, the radar operator here says it was not a radar. It was not a weather phenomenon. But check this out. 2 large targets picked up on radar. One estimated to be 5 miles long. And the other 2 miles long. Targets about 2 to 3 miles apart. Held targets from 90 miles ahead of starboard. 230-degree relative on starboard operator side. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, you know, that's pretty big. But the radar operator states emphatically, not clouds. So, what kind of weather phenomenon would go for 5 miles?
That's crazy.
I'm not sure. Might need
And
a
it says at
meteorologist for that.
31,000 feet. I mean, that's wild. What can, you know?
That's why you get hooked into these reports. It's like, holy crap. You know, what is this stuff? And then this is one I shared, I believe, on Twitter not too long ago. So these are just gonna be like quick little one,
Cool.
you know,
Let's do it.
cheaters or whatever. This one, yeah. So this is off the coast of California in the Pacific. Once again, object blinking and in flight from horizon to horizon in 20 seconds at speed of over 10,000 miles per hour at low altitude. Does not conform with any known object or phenomena. Case regarded and unidentified. So, but here, this is interesting. Brilliant white flashing light at low position. So I think later in here, I read that, maybe it wasn't this one. Bright flashing white light. You know what that reminds me of, though, is this pyramid reported to have about 400 blinks within a minute, right?
Oh, from the Russell, the 2019.
Yeah. So that made me start to look at some of these. And one of them, I couldn't get that high. I didn't find any that high, but I found one that blinked about 300 times per minute, you know, off the Pacific in the same area. So that's pretty interesting to me.
Around the same time as well.
No, this was, Blue Book time.
Yeah.
Not 2019, but
no, sorry, I meant about the sort of early 60s.
Yeah. So here's another one. There's so many of these. 1963 Pacific again, unidentified white blinking light in flight from west to east under observation from military aircraft. Duration lasted 15 seconds. Altitude of object unknown. Rapid transit across sky. It's literally what we just described.
Wow.
Traveled through a considerable arc. Reports of this nature listing altitude as unknown. Considerable height. So what's interesting here, such items as intensity and manner of disappearance are omitted from the service format. Service is NORAD. That's how NORAD documented their unidentified objects.
And why would they omit stuff from a report? Oh, it's not omitted from it's from the...
Yeah. I don't know. You have to ask the omitters, I guess. I don't know. But it's interesting that NORAD is involved with this stuff. Another interesting thing about these is you can see who they send these to, right? 1963. Who's getting these UFO reports? It's not just the Air Force. It's also, we have NSA 7 here, DIA, Army, maybe Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'm not sure. JCS.
Wow, that's a lot of groups.
Yeah, DIA. That's OSAP, my friend. In 1963, they're getting UFO reports. So all sorts of people had their hands on this stuff. Pretty interesting.
It is, man. And this is like you just said, it's like you come across things like this when you do deep dives and you start, seeing similarities and patterns almost in some of the cases from some of the eras and stuff. I mean, I did it a long time ago. And boy, I was up late many nights. Yeah, it's addictive, man. It can really draw you in.
Oh, sure, dude. You should look at my phone. It has more screenshots of military documents than I have my wife. Yeah.
At least you're honest, man. At least you're honest. But I think
that screenshot. I'm like, oh, I'm going to share this one later. Or
what about your screensaver on your phone? Though, is that just like your best document?
No, that's actually like an amp I had 6 years ago. Okay. And I've never changed it.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I was expecting to say, oh no, that one's my wife. But
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, there's the hold screen and then the screensaver, or the screensaver in the background. The background is my wife.
Yeah. And another place that if people don't really want to dig or start digging in the documents, go and read Graham Rendell's books. He's covered World War II, but also the Pacific. And other things as well. He's just a machine when it comes to writing about these old cases. And a lot of them are from the British perspective, but he does also and has also done deep dives into US documents from multiple archives and repositories as well. Can't recommend them enough, because not only do you get the information, but he points you in the direction of where he got them from. So he gives you a trail that you can go and research yourself. I can't recommend that enough.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Some of his work to me is some of the best I read, because he's just the details, or just the facts. He's not trying to lead you to believe it's this or that. He's just giving you the facts, and you're left with kind of an obvious conclusion, which is there's unidentified objects flying around, and we don't know what they all are. Some of them defy explanation. And that is the root truth of all this, So anything else from that? People have beliefs, people have their feelings. I'm not to say that they're wrong or that they're right. But there's one thing that we should all really be able to agree on based on the facts. And it's that there are objects in the skies, and we don't know what they all are.
Absolutely, completely agree.
Just evade explanation. So,
and it's been clearly happening for a long time. We've got like some of the stuff we've just looked at, some of the stuff you obviously cover on your channel, an awful lot. You know, they can't all be just brushed aside with simple prosaic explanations. They are genuine unknowns,
and that's okay.
And like it is, and we're not saying it's aliens.
Yeah. Well, some people are, but
some people, yeah. But I mean, I think I'm like you. Right. We'll just say they genuinely are unknown, and you know, maybe even a majority of these old cases we'll never know. But
right, and that's the kind of sad part. Is some of these I read, I'm like, I'll never know.
But looking at old cases can help with researching new cases as well.
Yeah.
So even if you can't solve that old case, if you see correlation to something that's happening in a more recent case, then that just helps. So that's kind of a bonus for me personally.
What is like one of your favorite cases, or what's a good case to you that helps tie history to, you know, the present? Some of the cases we know about that happened somewhat recently.
I mean, I suppose that, like, I mean, it's a lame answer, but the Lakenheath, because, you know, when I did that deep dive with David Clark and I actually got to hear the testimony from some of the people that were there, that just, I mean, there's only so far you can go with documents, and it's quite a long way. It's a great resource, but to hear corroborative, you know, hear voices of people that were there, that's just incredible.
It shakes you, you know, like
especially when it's. Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, once you hear their testimony and you hear them actually tell about it, talk about it, like, if they're lying, they would be like in movies making millions and millions of dollars. These people would be such good actors. It's unbelievable because you can feel the emotion in them, you know, you can hear it, you know, and
exactly.
And there's, like, on my website, if you go to my website, witnesscitizen.com, you go to research tools. There's one that's audio testimony that takes you to the archives, and there's all sorts of recordings of people giving their testimony, pilots, citizens, all sorts of people. And sure, you'll always run into some people that it's like, I don't know about you, sir. You know, but there's so many. The majority are giving an honest account of what happened, you know. And even Sergeant Moody, who spent most of his time researching these UFOs for Blue Book in the Air Force, when he retired, an article came out in the paper where he flat out said that 90% of these objects are reported by sincere, good people, you know. And that's 90% of, you know, whatever, 12,000 reports.
Yeah,
you know,
that's insane.
That's a lot of honest, sincere reports. And you know what they say? It only takes one. It only takes one of those, you know, to be something really bizarre that could shake everything up a bit, you know?
Totally, man. Absolutely. I've got a really good question here from Yorne. Sean, you've read so many documents. Have you ever read a document and figured out halfway in that you've already read it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. I'm starting to get to the point where, you know, my research puts me in the same place again. But it doesn't happen very often. And that's kind of why I still do it, right? So I'm always put into a different spot where I'm like, I had no idea. Wow, this is incredible. You
That's
know?
the thing. It's a never-ending thing. You can always find something new and something exciting almost, you know?
And there's so many ways to go about it. Like Ryan Graves' testimony in this article I read, I posted on Twitter yesterday about like a child's top, like a child's spinning top, you know? So I go to the archives and I'm like, let me check this out. I'm going to look for other accounts where it talks about a spinning top or like a child's top. And lo and behold, there's many accounts like that, you know? And that's the kind of stuff that can bridge you from then to now. It's like, what are the chances that people are still seeing something that looks like a spinning child's top? Come on. That's not like just a circle, you know, or something. That's a specific image and, you know, phrase to use. What are the chances? You know, it's pretty incredible.
Absolutely. Definitely. Well, mate, thank you so much for jumping on with me. We should do this more often, find more cases and dig into the history, because, it's been a while since I've done it on a grand scale, and I keep finding myself these days now slipping back into it. So, it'd be great to do it with yourself.
Yeah, so, I would love that, man. And you're always welcome to come on my show more often too.
Thank you.
The thing about like research, and I think at least this is how I get sometimes, is where I feel the pressure to have like a guest and stuff all the time, like a guest, and then you run out of guests. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? But that's the cool point about having friends and doing research. Like, we can just talk to each other, dude.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean,
finding the conversation.
Well, I get that. This is not what I'm doing, though. I actually genuinely wanted you on as a guest, so. And a friend, of course, that helps. But this wasn't like.
I appreciate it.
I have a guest tomorrow as well, so it's not like I needed it. But I really wanted to jump into some older cases. It's been on my mind so much. So
I think it's important that we talk to each other. And I really enjoy it every time, and I always learn something new from talking to you. So
thank you, man. I think this goes for everybody. A lot of the people on Twitter as well, is you may have opinions on that are completely different amongst everybody, but going and talking to people that are involved in something that you're talking about may actually help in some way. I feel it always helps to talk to the people that are involved in cases, no matter what, whether they were witnesses or military or whatever. Just talk to them.
Yeah.
It can always open a new door or shine a new light on a part of the case that may change your mind somewhere along the way. So reach out to people, talk. It's really important, and it goes a long way. So that's my little piece of advice.
Completely agree, man. I look up to you for sure. And I'm proud to say you're my friend and watching you do all the stuff you do out there. So
thanks, man.
I can't wait to continue to watch more episodes of the show that you're doing out in Colombia.
Oh yeah, thanks, man.
So because that's been really good so far. So
I appreciate it. Thanks to you. Thanks to everybody that's watched and supported that show. We've had a lot of positive feedback.
Awesome.
Yeah. On that note, thank you to everybody in the live chat for a great conversation. I'm sorry if I didn't get to all your questions. I'm going to be back tomorrow. So straight after today, back tomorrow with Katie Howland. And we're going to be going over sort of the NDAA, the IAA, and all kind of government related aspects of the phenomenon. So awesome. Come and join in, everyone. But for now, guys, take care, and I will see you then. Bye-bye.
Peace.